Don't. It still hurts there. Her voice tore out of her like a broken nail, thin and shaking, carried by the hot summer wind. Caleb McRae froze on one knee, his hands hovering where he knew he should not be, yet knew he had to be if she was going to live. The woman lay face down in the dead grass, her dress torn and filthy, her body trembling as if the ground itself had betrayed her. His shadow fell over her, broad and heavy, the kind of shadow that once meant safety to him and now meant terror to her. She tried to crawl away, fingers digging into dust and straw, every movement sending a sharp pain through her hips and upper thighs. Her breath hitched when he reached for his coat, and she flinched as if the fabric itself meant another hand where it did not belong. "Don't," she whispered again, weaker now. "It still hurts there." To anyone watching, it would have looked wrong. A big gray bearded rancher kneeling behind a young woman half broken in the grass. Caleb knew exactly how it looked, and he hated that the world had shaped itself this way. He eased his coat over her back, slow and careful, giving her cover from his eyes and the sky, his hands never touching bare skin. Blood had dried along her leg, not fresh now, dried hard from hours in the sun, angry and dark, proof of something rough and recent. He spoke low, his voice rough from years of dust and silence. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said, every word measured, every breath controlled. She did not answer. Her shoulders shook, and a sound came out of her that was not a sob, but something closer to an animal caught in wire. Caleb reached into his saddlebag, pulling out clean cloth and a small tin of water, moving slow enough that even the grass seemed to wait. When he shifted closer, she stiffened again, pain flashing across her face as her hips moved even an inch. That was when he saw it clearly, the bruising along her side, the way her body protected itself without her asking it to. This was someone being dragged around until pain became the only language left. Caleb felt something old and dangerous stir in his chest, something he had buried with other bad memories. He set the cloth on the ground where she could see it, then backed his hands away. "You do it," he said softly. "I'll tell you how." Her head turned just enough for one eye to find him, wide and glassy, searching for the lie she expected. When he did not move closer, when he stayed exactly where he was, something in her cracked. She reached for the cloth with shaking fingers, every inch of movement costing her. As she pressed it to her side, a sharp cry escaped her, and she bit down on her lip hard enough to draw blood. Caleb looked away on purpose, staring at the horizon where red rock rose from the land like broken teeth. He talked to keep her grounded, to keep her here. "Name's Caleb," he said, steady and plain. "I run cattle not far from here." She swallowed, then whispered, "Eliza." A fly buzzed between them, bold and careless, and Caleb waved it off without thinking. The heat pressed in, thick and suffocating, and he knew she could not stay out here much longer. When she tried to shift again, pain seized her, and her hand clenched in the grass. "It still hurts," she said, quieter now, like an apology. Everywhere there, Caleb nodded once, even though she could not see it. "I know," he said, because it was the only honest thing he had. He poured a little water onto the cloth, sliding it closer with the toe of his boot, never crossing the line she had drawn. As she cleaned herself as best she could, tears ran down her face and disappeared into the dust. That was when she whispered a name, barely more than air. "Wade." Caleb's eyes hardened. Names mattered out here, and that one did not sound like a man who feared God or law. Before he could ask, hoofbeats carried faint across the plain, distant but real. Eliza heard them too, her body tensed, panic snapping back into her like a whip. "He'll find me," she said, terror sharpening her voice. "He always does." Caleb rose slowly, standing tall now, scanning the land. The summer wind shifted, bringing with it the smell of sweat, leather, and horses that did not belong to him. He looked down at Eliza, small and broken in the grass, and understood something final. Helping her would cost him peace. Walking away would cost her life. He knelt again, careful, deliberate, making a choice he knew would follow him to his grave. "I ain't leaving you," he said, firm now. Not today. Her eyes searched his face, reading every line, every scar, weighing truth against terror. The hoofbeats grew louder, and as Caleb reached for the reins to lift her from the ground without touching her hurt, one question hung in the hot air, heavy as a verdict. Who was Wade Hart? And what kind of man hurts a woman so badly that even help feels like another crime? Caleb lifted Eliza the only way he could, slow and careful, one arm under her shoulders, the other braced at her knees, never letting his hands wander where fear might turn into panic. She was lighter than she should have been, all bone and shaking muscle, like someone who had not eaten right in a long time. The hoofbeats faded behind them as he carried her to the shade of his horse, tying the reins low and steady so the animal would not spook. Got a place not far, he said, plain and easy, water, shade, and a roof that don't leak much. She nodded once, barely. When he set her down against the saddle, she winced, hands gripping leather until her knuckles went white. I know, he said, without being asked. I know it hurts. They moved slow across the plain, the horse walking easy, Caleb leading by the reins so she would not feel every step. The sun slid lower, still hot, but less cruel now. By the time his ranch came into view, a low spread of weathered wood and wire near Kayenta, Eliza was trembling again, not from pain alone. This was the part where people got handed back. This was the part where lies caught up. Caleb saw it in her face and chose his words careful. You stay as long as you need, he said. No one gets you without you saying so. At the ranch, he settled her on a narrow bed by the window, curtains pulled to keep the heat out. He set water within reach, then stepped back, giving her space like a man who had learned the cost of crossing lines. Eliza watched him with one eye open, every move judged, every breath counted. He washed his hands slow at the basin, letting her hear the water, letting her see he was not in a hurry. Rule here, he said, turning away from her while he spoke. Door stays cracked. I don't touch unless you ask. And if you want me gone, I go. That earned him a look, sharp and confused. Most men did not offer exits. Night came thick and quiet. Crickets filled the dark, and the wind pushed dust against the walls. Eliza slept in pieces, waking with a sharp breath, hands flying to protect herself before she remembered where she was. Each time, Caleb stayed where he was, seated by the table, clean intact that did not need cleaning. In the morning, he found fresh tracks near the water trough. 2 horses, shod, recent. Someone had been asking around. He did not tell Eliza right away. Instead, he fixed coffee, weak and bitter, and left it on the table with bread and a little dried meat. She ate slow, watching him like a stray cat deciding whether to bolt. Later that day, they rode into Tuba City for supplies. Caleb kept his hat low, eyes open. Eliza kept close, her steps careful, pain still written into the way she moved. Inside the general store, a man looked too long. Then he looked again. His smile did not reach his eyes. Caleb felt it before Eliza did. The shift in the room, the air tightening. The man said her name like it belonged to him. Eliza froze. Caleb stepped between them without thinking. There was no speech, no warning, just a short, hard movement that sent the man stumbling back into a stack of crates, wood cracked. People shouted. Caleb did not chase. He took Eliza's arm, steady but not tight, and walked her out. Outside, a deputy watched them go and said nothing. That told Caleb everything he needed to know. Back at the ranch, Eliza finally spoke the truth, not in detail, just enough. Wade Hart was her stepfather, a respected man to the neighbors, a devil behind closed doors. Caleb listened, jaw set, hands still. When she finished, there was nothing clever to say. So he said the only thing that mattered. You're safe here, he said, for now. That night, the wind carried the sound of distant riders. Not close enough to see, close enough to warn. Caleb stood on the porch, rifle resting against the rail. Coffee gone cold in his hand. Helping her meant trouble. Letting her go meant worse. He looked back at the light in the window, at the shadow of a young woman who had already survived more than most. And he knew the road ahead it was going to hurt everyone involved. Before we move on, drop a comment. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? The next morning, Caleb did not pretend things were normal, because out here pretending got folks buried. He was up before the sun cleared the ridge, feeding his horse, checking the fence line, and walking the edge of his property like a man measuring how much trouble could fit inside a day. Eliza stayed near the window, sitting with a blanket around her shoulders, even though the summer air was already warm. She watched him move around the yard, and every time he turned his back, she seemed to breathe a little easier. That told Caleb she still trusted her fear more than she trusted any promise. He did not take offense. Fear kept people alive. He did something simple instead. He gave her a job that did not require strength or speed. He set a small pan on the table with a few beans and a dull knife. "If you feel up to it," he said, "trim the bad spots. We'll make stew tonight." She looked at the beans like they were a test. Then she nodded and started working, slow and careful. It was not about stew. It was about giving her proof that she still had a say in what happened next. Caleb saddled up around mid-morning, and Eliza stiffened, thinking he was leaving. He shook his head. "I ain't riding off," he said. "I'm riding close." He pointed toward the road like he was talking to himself. Those tracks by the trough weren't coyotes. Eliza's knife stopped. Her eyes lifted. Caleb kept his voice steady. "We're going back into town," he said. "Not for fun, just to listen." She swallowed. "I don't want him to see me. He already sees you," Caleb said. "We're just going to see him back." They rode into Tuba City late morning. When the heat started to climb and the street turned soft with dust, Caleb kept Eliza on his right side, close enough that he could read her breathing. He did not hold her arm. He did not push her along. He let her choose the pace, and that alone kept her from breaking. Caleb bought a small sack of salt and a spool of twine, then leaned on the counter like he had all day. The clerk, a thin man with tired eyes, nodded toward the street. "You the one got in a scrap yesterday?" Caleb shrugged. "Fella bumped into me." The clerk gave a small half smile, the kind folks gave when they did not want trouble but liked seeing someone else get it. "That fella's name's Deke," the clerk said, dropping his voice. "Works for Wade Hart." Eliza flinched like her body heard that name before her mind did. Caleb watched the clerk's face. "Wade Hart," Caleb said. "Quiet." The clerk looked away. "That man's got friends," he muttered. Caleb let the silence sit a moment. Then he said, "Easy. Friends or fear?" The clerk did not answer, but his hands shook just enough to tell the truth. Outside, Caleb did not head straight back to the ranch. He took Eliza to a shaded spot behind the livery, near old barrels and the smell of sweat and horses. He kept his voice low. "He's got a reach," and he said, "and he's using it." Eliza stared at the ground. "He always does." She whispered. Caleb nodded once. He could have asked for every detail. He did not. He asked the only thing that mattered for survival. "Is he coming?"